The revised fiscal framework also will have to be incorporated into the review. So the diagram on the right, I think we have presented it previously in terms of the hierarchy of planning, starting with the NDP. In our view, the NDP is still alive and kicking, and then we'll only factor the review of the NDP. Now, flowing from the NDP, we go to the MTSF, and then to the sector and cluster A plans. So it's the NDP, MTSF, and the cluster and sector A plans. Let's move to the next one. The next slide. Now, I wanted to come to this, the process. Now, the process has 3 phases. Phase 1 is the preparation or preparatory phase from July to the end of August, this month we are in now. And that entails developing a roadmap and project plan, which has already been done, consultation and alignment of the NDP review, 4IR report, priority skills master plan, district development model, and then followed by consultation and awareness with clusters and FOSAT. I need to indicate that that process has started. We've already presented to the FOSAT MANCO and clusters, finalized the MTSF monitoring report. Now, earlier on, the DM indicated that the report that we're presenting is not the MTSF report. Now, the MTSF report entails what has been done up to now since the start of the implementation of the MTSF, and particularly in the current financial year. So once that report is finalized, it will form part of the input. So in short, the MTSF report will form part of the input into the review, and also the COVID reports will form part of the MTSF review. Then we move to the next phase, which is updating the actual content of the MTSF. Please go back slightly to that slide. The previous slide, yes. So this one is now when you start to work on the content. And after doing that, we will then finalize by going back to cabinet with a draft revised MTSF. And as indicated earlier, this is a document that will then come back to yourselves, where we say, after consulting with everyone in government and taking into account and into consideration all the inputs, this is the final document that now will be translated into annual performance plans of departments. As you can see, that will be done from December 2020 to Jan 2021, followed by the updating of the APPs of the different government departments. Next one. The next slide. Now, here's the problem. The problem in planning in government is constrained by the way government is structured. What this means, honorable members, is that if you have 40 departments, you cannot have a situation whereby there is a department that will not receive any financial allocation because it is not a priority. So the structure of government as it is conditions you on how you plan and allocate resources. This is a matter that were brought to the attention of the principals in the form of our minister and the DM to really find a way of allowing us to plan in such a way that we are not constrained by the way government is structured. So if we take a decision that we are going to focus on broadband, it should be possible to do so without people in rail feeling offended by that. Now, it's not an easy thing because on a daily basis, all of us in government are expected to do work. So it is a big challenge that we're discussing with the political principals. Let's move to the next slide. Now, the other issue related to what I just said now is the criteria, and we are toying with a number of options as to there are always so many things that needs to be done, but can ever be done. Now, the question is, as we come to Parliament most of the time, we are told across the spectrum of government that we have so many targets and we need to minimize the number of targets that we are going to follow as government so that we can also allocate resources efficiently. Now, we are grappling with such issues, honorable members. We are looking at the policy part of it, the social implications, economic, environmental, regional integration, technical issues, the capacity of the state. Now, out of these issues, The key question is, what is that we can do and what's that we can defer at a later point? How do we arrive at saying that this year rail is a priority and then next year broadband is a priority, using some form of a criteria that assists us to do so? Let's move to the next one. Well, this is the same, it's still around the methodology that we can use to arrive at priorities. And when we respond to questions, we are going to deal with some of these issues. Let's move to the next one. Now, as you can see, once catalytic interventions are identified through the priority setting processes, this should be aligned to the result-based framework of the MTSF to ensure that they are measurable. Now, honorable members, it's easy for all of us to say we want to build a new rail infrastructure in South Africa. That will be a statement of intent or statement of vision, but that needs to be accompanied by certain measurable indicators so that we can then come back and report on specific issues. Now, the key issues to pursue when it comes to measuring the implementation of government programs, that will include impact, outcomes, outputs, activities, indicators, and targets. Now, in short, most of the time, we conflate these issues and treat them as one and the same thing. That's why when we come back to Parliament, we give you outputs as if they are outcomes. Now, we want to make that very clear in the process of revising the MTSF that these are separate indicators and each and every level should be accounted for. For example, the impact, when you assess impact, you go back to the NDP and say, this is what we said would be the outcome. For example, if we say that we want most South Africans to live in the cities, I'm just giving it as an example. It means that when you assess impact, you must then assess it against that and say, okay, do we have more South Africans living in the cities? So we will do the same with each and every indicator so that they are not conflicted in government, but they are understood to be separate, and each one of them must be reported on, including when we come to Parliament, not only to this portfolio committee, but also to the other portfolio committees. Next. Yes, Chairperson, on that note, this concludes our presentation. This was just an update to honorable members to indicate that we are aware of the impact of COVID on the economy and social life, and also the other outstanding issues that have been mentioned, starting from the DM's opening remarks. Now, after we've done everything, and now we have the draft MTSF approved by the principals, we will be able to interact with yourselves and indicate what will be the new areas of focus across the whole of government. Thank you.
Thank you very much, DG. And I'm sure as we engage also, if there are any other important points in the first presentation that you might have missed because of the time, I'll suggest that you may also include them as we engage. Honorable members, we have received all the presentations. That gives us more than enough time to engage. I will request that if possible, without limiting our questions, but also prioritize your questions on the presentation, then the rest will follow. But I know Honorable Clark will be very excited because she has been looking forward to get this report. Having said that, honorable members, I will go per list in terms of what I can, not necessarily because of the show of hands, but because of the attendance register that is reflecting on the screen here, and that I've got Honorable Kibi, Honorable Dooley, Honorable Dr. Schreiber, Honorable Watsipe, Honorable Sibisi, Honorable Maluleka, Honorable Malati, Honorable Clark. I understand Honorable Malumane, she's not well, she might not, but she can be the last if she wishes to do so. Honorable Kibi.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Let me once more greet the honorable members, the DM, the colleagues. Allow me, Chair, to welcome the presentations, both of them. But, Comrade Chair, Indeed, COVID-19 has had devastating effects on socio-economic activities in the country. Its effects are not only significant to South Africans, but globally as well. And there was no manual to deal with the ordeal, but as a country,
My
we are
apologies,
still.
Honorable Kibi, if you may show your video if possible, unless it's going
Come
to
again?
disturb you. I'm suggesting that if it's not going to disturb your audibility, you can put your camera on, your video on.
Okay,
please.
okay. Oh, thank you, Honorable Chair. sorry, Chair. I'm saying, Chair, indeed, COVID-19 has had devastating effects on socio-economic activities in the country. Its effects are not only significant to South Africans, but globally as well. And there was no manual to deal with the ordeal. But as a country, we are still managing the virus. As a result of the pandemic, a number of people were laid off their source of income and employment, and many dependent in the government grants that government had distributed. And as the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation was the department monitoring the distribution these grants, and is the department keeping a tally or seeing that majority of people that applied for the grants received them, including the social distress relief in the form of food parcels, and 350 for those who don't have any source of income or government grants beneficiaries. The department would know that there has been outcry of alleged corruption or misuse of those, as my colleague have already indicated that there is also those people that were really complaining about the misuse and any other thing. Honorable Chair, as I'm still going through my notes this here, Honorable Chair, my next one will be in terms of slide 5, the department has indicated that a decision was taken to put the country on the lockdown was attributed to the arrest of the pandemic, flatten the curve, and to improve the capacity of the health system. What kind of capacity in the health sector did government anticipate to improve, since our healthcare facilities are not in good conditions? Secondly, is government willing to prioritize maintenance and building new infrastructure for healthcare facilities to avoid situation where the country can be found wanting in case of current and future health disasters? Honorable Chair, allow me to again get to my other notes. Honorable Chair, on the other presentation, I just want to know, are there plans in government to deal with the food security and poverty alleviation? I also want to know, how far is government with the post-COVID recovery plan, and how is this going to be included in the MTSF? I also want to know, when is the department going to finalize the Q1 report on the MTSF, and how is this going to inform the review of the MTSF? I also want to know, how is the department improving its monitoring capabilities through the use of technologies. My last one is, how is DPME managing to ensure that there is synergy with the district development model? I hope my questions are captured well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. It's quite a mouthful of questions, and I'm sure the department also, those ones they can't respond direct in terms of the specifics, they will follow up in writing in terms of the responses. Honorable Tuli, over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable Chairperson, Honorable read my mind a lot.
Okay.
In terms of the questions that I wanted to sort of ask and some clarities that I wanted to check. But safe to say, I wanted also to check that given that the COVID-19 swayed all the plans, particularly it wouldn't be, the third plan wouldn't be followed as planned. Now we are having just a new normal. Did the department try maybe to seek for any empowerment, sort of training of some sort to sweep through this pool of COVID pandemic? Again, I wanted to check something to say, indeed, the social relief has been mentioned for many sectors, but what assurance can government give us to say, of course, it landed safely to the relevant stakeholders? For instance, in the presentation, many sectors were mentioned, including sports. To say such sports code did get relief that was meant for the participant. One other thing, Chair, that I wanted to check is that recently in the media, there's been a lot of maladministration with regards to the procurement, personal protective equipment, meaning PPE. May the department elaborate on the role that it played to evaluate this process to ensure irregular expenditure did not take and would not continue being experienced? But take into cognizance that we are in the Women's Month, August, I wanted also to check to say, can the department provide some facts that also women were able to benefit in the procurement of the PPEs for the COVID-19. Because in most cases, you'll find that we'll talk your quota, what for women. But when you go deep down on the ground, you will find that it's just theoretical. It's not practical. Is there any assurance to say there are women organization that benefited as such? Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Member, Dr. Schreiber, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me? I'm just checking.
Yes, you are audible. Thank you.
Also got my video on. Thank you, and good morning, colleagues, and thank you for the presentation. Chair, I think if we reflect honestly on what these last couple of months have done, then I think that a lot of the rosy picture that we've seen here today is not borne out and certainly not being experienced in a positive way by South Africans. I was a little bit disturbed to see that some of the figures and data being used to promote South Africa's response or to suggest that it was better than many other countries. Some of those slides are from the 5th of May, and of course we are now in the middle of August already. So I think that if we fast forward a couple of months beyond those initial periods, it's quite clear that the COVID situation in South Africa has worsened to the point where we now have the 5th most cases in the world. And we've also had an extreme and inordinate amount of economic and social damage, which I think will go far beyond the 7% that was referenced in the presentation. My question to the department is, if we are being presented with information from the 5th of May, how can we be confident that the situation is being monitored as we speak, meaning beyond these initial reports, and what the department plans to do to track the impact, especially if things turn out to be far more negative, more devastating on the economic side compared to what they have initially presented to us here. So what is the plan going forward for measuring and mitigating an impact which I think is going to be far worse than what the department has shared with us today? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Honorable Schreiber. That should lead us to Honorable Motsipe. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Lisoma, and Honorable members. I would start with the first presentation. The World Health Organization has complimented South African government in dealing with the coronavirus pandemic as compared to other European countries. First question, did the lockdown in terms of various alert levels implemented assisted the country in flattening the curve and improving health service? Number two, was there any research done by an independent survey firm to analyze the impact in both pronged approach, which is to determine the impact of coronavirus if the government had not decided to implement the lockdown, and the impact of the lockdown in terms of socio-economic development in the country? And then I would also like to emphasize this issue that, are you assuring the nations that to go down to level 2, it will flatten the curve of this virus, which is COVID-19 pandemic? Are you also sure that will be cooperation from the society by easing this lockdown of opening, especially selling of alcohol and cigarettes? It will be not go high to the peak again and to make hospitals full, and the mortality rate will be not rising again. And then I would also have the question of, how far are you with the corruption issue done during this COVID-19 pandemic? And then on the second presentation, I've got only one question, which is during coronavirus lockdown, a well-coordinated and integrated government planning has been witnessed. Will the department build and strengthen on the cooperation of the three spheres of government in order to implement government program of action? Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Motsipe. Honorable Maluleka, over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Chairperson, and my apologies for joining late. And I'm not going to be able to show my camera because of the network problem. Chairperson, let me just join other honorable members in appreciating the presentation that was given by the presenters. I've got a few questions that I need to comment on. On slide 14, it highlights that there was a decline in alcohol-related crime. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, my apology, Honorable Maluleka. My apology. There's somebody who's he or she can just move a little bit away from you. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay. But my camera is not on, Honorable Chairperson. Can you hear me? Chairperson?
Yes, you are, ma'am. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Yes, Honorable.
Yes, I was saying, according to their presentation, slide 14 highlights that there was a decline in alcohol-related crime and hospital services. Having learned the lessons on the increase of fatalities after unbanning of alcohol and in lockdown alert level 3, what can the government do, or what strategies can they have to minimize alcohol-related crimes in the future? And also, when there was this presentation, there was a highlight about the relief during this COVID-19. You see, the president, when he introduced the social relief fund. Communities, especially the poor of the poorest, were happy, but things didn't go right. Food passes, grants for unemployment were not distributed as expected. What is it that the department is going to do to ensure that what government is planned for its citizen is implemented? And lastly, Chairperson, let me go back to my other notes. Just bear with me, Chairperson, just for a moment. I just want to get, okay, I've got my notes correctly now. I just want to find out from the department, what are there plans in government to deal with food security and poverty alleviation? And how far is government with the post-COVID recovery plan, and how is this going to be included in their MTSF? I think some of these questions other honorable members have raised them. But lastly, I would like to find out from the department, how is it going to manage and ensure that there is synergy with the district development model? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. That will bring us to Honorable Sibisi.
Morning, Chairperson, and greetings to all members and DM and also the members of the portfolio. One would like to thank the departments for the presentation. But after the presentation, one will have a concern that after all that has been said, and we see that this lockdown has been the pandemic, now one will check that if we are losing almost 1.8 to 3 million of jobs, and also our economy looks like to go down. So what plan does the department have? The recovery plan that will give hope to all the South Africans that indeed our government is doing something, because we cannot blame the government for what has happened about the lockdown. But now, as the government, we need to rise above the situation or the occasion and bring hopes to all those South Africans, even those who have not got the food parcel, even those who did not get the relief funds. So what is the recovery plan that the department will put in place in order to bring back South Africa in its former state? Thank you.
Honorable Member, thank you so much, Honorable Sibisi. That will bring us to Honorable Malati. I did indicate that I've just noted all the names of honorable members. You may indicate if you deem not to ask any question. Honorable Malati, over to you, sir.
Thanks, Chairperson, and thanks to the teams for the different presentations. The initial point that I wanted to clear has been raised adequately so by my colleague, Honorable Schreiber. But there's an aspect of it, Chair, which I think is important. If you look at the documents, as it relied heavily on information at the end of April, there have been significant developments in the last 2 months about how the country has handled its response to the pandemic and many of the other measures that have been taken since that time. And as this is the department that is tasked with doing the monitoring, the planning in government, one would expect that even the information that gets presented before us would reflect at least the closest possible situation to the current reality as is, so that when we engage these things, we can engage them accurately based on developments as they are now. Because even if you look at the number of cases then, it was in the initial phase of the pandemic outbreak in the country. Therefore, if we focus so wholly on it then, we are looking at a very skewed picture, and that can lead us to misleading conclusions about doing a thorough review of how has government's performance been throughout. So I guess my question is related to that is, what is the post the finalization of these documents which are presented to us now, what is the state of the government's response according to this department in terms of the 2-month period that has occurred in June and July, and the developments there? Because if you go further into these debates, there are things that hint on what is likely to happen. I mean, there is an excerpt from the presentation that talks about the devastation that the lockdown has had on economic activities and the anticipated number of job losses that are anticipated in our economy. And as we all know by now, those figures have shifted significantly over the course of the last 8 weeks. And secondly is the issue of corruption. I mean, I want to get a sense from the department that, what informs the government's, and in this case, the president's decision to establish an interministerial committee that looks at all questionable ethical issues when there are law enforcement agencies in the country that are tasked in particular with the fight against corruption and that have been established for that purpose. Is that a sign of no confidence in the institutions that have been established to fight corruption when an interministerial committee gets established, which one can argue duplicates or attempts to duplicate the work that should be done by law enforcement agencies that have been set up in our constitution, in our country? And lastly, Chair, to get to the government messaging and the platforms that it has been used. And I think, one would be realistic enough to recognize that there's been a heavy presence of government message in communities to alert the public about, all the COVID-19 regulations that need to be adhered to, and more importantly, what we as citizens need to do. So in light of that, I just want to establish the cost factors associated with government spending on amplifying its messages, be it on social media, print media, and radio, and most importantly, on community media, which is one area of the media landscape that is really struggling and has been identified by this administration as an area of penetration for its message to the South African public. If we can get, the breakdown of costs associated with taking government message to the public through the different forms of media, so that we can also measure whether there's been value received for money in terms of the extensive government messaging in those platforms. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Malatsi. Honorable Clark, and after I'll request that Masi read out the questions from Honorable Maluman as well. Thank you. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm not going to switch my camera on because we have load shedding here, and I'm sure then I'm not going to be able to have adequate signal. Yes, I have been covered by many of the speakers, and particularly Honourable Malatsi. I must say I'm very disappointed in this this report, because it really doesn't tell us what the true situation is at the moment. I would also just like to say that I would really like to see in the report the impact COVID-19 has had in terms of lives versus livelihood. Because, I mean, if you look at the real picture at the moment, we're looking at an additional 3 million jobs to be lost in this country. I'd also like to see a proper report in terms of tenders issued, the fraud and corruption around those tenders, and what government is going to do in order to deal with that. And as Honourable Malatsi said, I mean, have we lost confidence in the law enforcement agencies in this country that an interministerial ministerial committee has now been established to investigate this? I mean, you just look at in Gauteng at the Nasrec Field Hospital, where 13 million rand was spent on 13,000 beds. I mean, those are the kind of things we want to see. Why these astronomical price surges on this kind of equipment was imposed. I'd also like to see what outcome the banning of alcohol and tobacco has had in terms of economy, because we see that within the alcohol industry, and that's not just alcohol consumption. I mean, you're talking about bottling companies, etc. There's 100,000 jobs been lost there. SAB has withdrawn their 2 billion rand investment to government. And, we talk about citizens buy-in. If you look at the hospitality industry and the tourism industry, who I know many people in those industries are saying, the curfew that's now still being imposed on them means that they need to close their kitchens by 8 o'clock, because by 9 o'clock their staff are 10 o'clock. So, I mean, that kind of curfew that's been put in place for those sectors makes it very difficult for those sectors to recoup back into the economy. I also would like to mention that many small businesses that applied for relief did not get relief when I speak to a lot of people because they weren't compliant. I really feel that government should look at doing a tax amnesty on small business and assisting small business to actually comply, because it would be a win-win situation for everybody. They would be contributing correctly to the tax fiscus, and and it's important that they comply. So I really think a government need to look at that aspect and to assist small businesses in order to do that. I'd also like to see a report in terms of the social relief grant, because many people have not received that relief grant at all as yet. A report on the UIF and the fraud that's happened with that, because I know many companies have applied for UIF who have not received that relief as yet. And then when you look at sectors like manufacturing and construction, I mean, you know, they were allowed to go back into level 3, but because the economy is so bad, those sectors have just got no business at this stage. So, you know, I don't think this report we've received tells a true picture. And I'm looking forward to seeing a report that actually gives us the correct information and correct specifics and correct reporting. Thank you.
Honorable Member, Masi, can you read Honorable Malumane's questions, please, for me?
Yes, thanks, Chair. The question by Honorable Malumane reads as follows. COVID-19 has exposed a lot where certain services were not reaching the people that needs it most, particularly healthcare services. Going forth, will the department conduct a follow-up on these shortfalls and pay greater attention to healthcare services, particularly those in remote areas? It continues, seemingly now that we are on alert level 2, presuming that a lot of public servants will be returning to work and in which a lot of sector will be returning to normality. Will DPME be monitoring this process, particularly with regards to measures and PPEs to avoid the spread? Thank you, Chair.
Very much, Masi. From my side, I will tell you, DM and DG, that the mixed feeling on the first report in terms of the COVID, which we can say stroke first quarter, is because it's not updated, and unfortunately, you are 3 steps behind the public information that we have received. Then hence I understand the members when we are saying that it should be an updated one, but probably at the end we may make suggestions as how do we navigate and move forward on that one to get an updated status. It's notwithstanding that the second quarter should also incorporate that. From my side then, I would like also to register, honorable members and colleagues, that by no means that we are underestimating the negative and positive impact of COVID-19 that has disrupted the normal and to force us to go to the so-called new normal. But also, we would like the department to appreciate that it is the pillar and also the very important coordinating link of all government departments. I think I did say it in some of the meetings that if both of us as the portfolio committee and DPME, they should be within 2 years' time, very few departments that appear before SCOPA. I'm saying that all of us, we must start appreciating our importance as this department. Hence, even the questions, they cut across all the. So this department must know everything, must coordinate everything, must monitor everything, must also assess everything in terms of its impact in the finality, as it were, which I'm happy that the DG spoke about the performance indicators, the impact, the outcome, the interventions, which are outputs and activities and indicators and targets. But also you can't, from our side as the portfolio committee, DG and DM, measure something that is not measurable, which is open-ended. Hence, then, your role comes in there to force the departments, when they do their plans, also they set up the targets that are met so that they can be able to account on. My question then from my side, having covered by most of the, almost every speaker, honorable members, is that during last 2 weeks when I was doing my oversight, I went to schools and also to hospitals, in particular in schools. One of the schools that I visited, I observed that in terms of water infrastructure was there, but we had more above that, supply them with JoJo tanks and all that. That example I'm giving you to say that one would also appreciate if the department can look at, we don't just throw money to a challenge, but we throw money where it's needed most. Because if it's a well infrastructure school, why do you need JoJo tank in an urban area? Instead of fixing or maintaining if there are leakages in terms of pipes and so forth. So I think the one jacket fits all approach, in particular in providing this intervention for COVID-19, must also be informed by the actual situation on the ground. But also the other one, I think it's Honorable Maluleka, but I would say we would love also, based on other colleagues' questions, that you should provide us a status, having observed and identify the areas of focus that we may focus on as the country, as it were. And I'm sure you are doing that. But I think in terms of the presentation also, it didn't come very clear. This is how you would have observed the trends, as it were. Hence, Honorable Malatsi, the question says that the presentation, we need an update, but at the end, as I'm saying, that we will decide as members, how do we then ask the department to present the latest information, as it were. DM, I'll give you a bite first, then the DG will, and those ones without details, don't give us a thumbs up response, but you give us those ones that you can give us the response now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to members of the Portfolio Committee. I think the team is well capacitated to answer all the questions. I'm going to respond to the one of corruption. First things to clarify is that in relation to the Inter-Ministerial Committee, which was constituted by Cabinet and announced by the President, its sole purpose is not to prosecute or to conduct an investigation. You would remember that throughout the pandemic, President has continued to say that he would keep South Africans abreast every 6 weeks, he would engage with us. Now, the committee led by Minister Lamula, its only role is to take all the companies which procured PPEs and then to publicize them to South Africans in the spirit of accountability. Nothing else. They do not have, it does not have the powers to charge, investigate, or any other thing. It's collection of the companies from various departments and sharing them with South Africans, and nothing else. We remain confident in state institutions of the justice cluster in relation to them dealing with corruption, and not only corruption of PPEs or COVID-related, any other corruption. As you have, if you have noticed, like the President took South Africans into confidence that the SIU would be swiftly dealing with the issues of corruption. I'm sure you have seen that accounts of others who are supposed to come and account to them have been frozen by the SIU. They are busy conducting questions. For example, in Gauteng, they have already started, and other provinces. We have also seen the police arresting others in the Eastern Cape, for example. So there is work that is being done, and we remain confident in our state institution that they have got the capacity to deal with the matters and take South Africans into confidence. I also want to commit that as a department, when we come back to give you a COVID annual report, if I can put it that for a lack wording, it will also speak to what is it that government has been doing in relation to corruption of PPEs and any other corruption during the pandemic. So that report, we will bring it to this committee so that we can show you that government remains committed to dealing with issues of corruption. Yes, no, that's all. I'm going to ask the DG and the team to deal with the other issues. I just thought I needed to clarify this one. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, DM. Thanks, Chairperson and honorable members. There are quite a number of questions. What I will do, I will answer some of the questions and indicate where we will still come back to the committee and provide certain information in writing. Doing this because we have quite a lot of information at our disposal, and then we'll have to figure out how we share the information. Chair, we take note of the suggestion by members. I'll call it a suggestion than a question, that when we come to present on the quarterly reports, it is we include a summation of the contemporary issues of that period. So that is going to be done. And in the main, this will entail asking the relevant departments, because there are so many things that are going on in government. And as we speak now, there may be other presentations that are taking place on some of the issues that are being raised here. So we commit that as we present the quarterly report, we'll also reflect on the contemporary issues of that period. At the same time, we will focus quite a lot on the parliamentary questions, particularly on these issues, so that as the parliamentary questions come, then we use that as an opportunity to also send information back to yourselves as and when you require clarification on various issues. So that is going to be done. Let me then go to Honorable Malumani on the issue of the public servants going back to work. Now, when the Minister of COGTA issued the regulations for level 2, she was also very specific in terms of the requirements for that period, level 2. So we envisage that everyone, including government, will comply with the requirements of level 2. Now, as far as we are concerned in government, the DPSA is largely responsible for this function and works with all other government departments to ensure that based on the regulations that have been issued for level 2, we also have our own supplementary requirements that apply across departments. So that is going to happen at the right time as we move to opening a government. The DPSA, which also report to this committee, will update yourselves on what is being done. Now, I've dealt with some of the issues raised by Honorable Clark that we will incorporate some of the contemporary issues when we report. Now, on the issue of food security, out of the reports that we have recognized the fact that there is a lot that is being done currently in government, and a lot will still need to be done. So what we're doing, we are convening departments that have a role to play in this area of food security, and that will include DCOG, Agriculture, National Treasury, Small Business, and Social Development. Now, the approach is that as DPME, we can play a role in ensuring that there is a cross-cluster engagement when it comes to this important issue, as opposed to a situation whereby the social cluster will have its own plan, and on the other hand, the economic cluster will have its own plan. And as we move forward, we will inform all the honorable members on the progress with regard to food security. Then, with the tenders that have been issued, I think it's foregone that across provinces and at national government, we are publicizing the tenders that have been issued, and some provinces and national departments have already done that. So that will become a new normal where government will have to always inform citizens of the tenders that have been issued. So that is currently being done. The DMS dealt with the issue of the Interministerial Committee that it was not intended to carry out policing functions, but was for the purposes of making sure that where we preside as national government, we comply and lead by example in publicizing the tenders that have been issued. I will not respond to the issue of NASREC and the beds. We can ask the relevant department to give us further details. We didn't monitor that. Then on the tobacco and alcohol ban, what we can say at this stage is that this is a question of a cost-benefit analysis. Now, when you do a cost-benefit analysis, it does not mean that when you make choices, there would be no challenges. So you just have to weigh up things at any given point. And I understand that what has happened, government has to weigh the health concern and the economic concern at the same time. Now, doing so is not an easy task. Whichever choice you make, there will always be people who will not be satisfied by that choice. So it's a function of a cost-benefit analysis, which can be debated at length. But in the statements issued by the Minister of COGTA, she had attempted to also clarify what this issue was all about. We did not do a cost-benefit analysis ourselves on this specific issue, but we followed what was being discussed in government, that this was an attempt to create some equilibrium between health consideration versus economic considerations. Now, also on the issue of the curfew, if I were to respond to this, it would be a personal view, but I think again it has been explained in the same light, and I think in the other committees that oversee COGTA, this issue will come up. Now, on the social relief grants, which is what we have monitored, up to the end of this reporting period, we had focused more on what was being done. So what we've told members, and we believe that is very important for members to always also get information on where everything started. It could be that the latest issues are more appealing, but the reporting on the previous issues also help us to create a baseline. Now, the issue here is that what we're reporting now is what was done, the packages that were distributed to different communities. When we come back in the next reporting period, we are going to then say, honorable members, having given you what was done, this is what actually happened. This was the impact on the social relief grants, on the food parcels. So our teams are hard at work as we speak now, trying now to drill into these issues. Did people really receive the food parcels? Are the food parcels of the right quality? And what is going to happen going forward? So we will report on this. And because this is a very serious issue, Chairperson, we will then go back to the minister and the deputy minister and ask them for some kind of arrangement for us to brief Parliament much earlier than the end of the quarter, if at all possible. So the issue of food security and social relief can be prioritized such that we find a way, and we can be guided by you, Chairperson, at the end on how you want us to come back to report. Then on the questions raised by Honorable Malulega on the level 2 requirements with regard to alcohol. Again, this was not an easy decision to take, and I speak as a person who was part of some of the meetings. It was also, again, about trying to strike a balance between the economic and the health requirements. Now, this, quite frankly, does not always come easy. It's a complicated matter, but our understanding is that we will be working with the Department of Health and others. There is a mechanism that has been introduced. It's a digital mechanism which, although it's not spearheaded by us, but by States SA and the Department of Innovation, Science and Innovation, maybe at some point can be shared with the principals so that principals can have an appreciation that we are beginning to also use technology to validate some of the things that we are talking about. So there is a massive data analytic tool that has been developed in government, and it will be used widely to help us to track and ensure that we get the necessary evidence. So this is a very difficult answer, but we will continue to update you insofar as we enter this space of assessing impacts, because we're moving now from in Q1, we're focusing on the output. Then in the Q2, that is when we're going to see us getting deeper into impact assessment. Then on the economic recovery question raised by Honorable Sibisi, there are quite a number of things that are being done in government. The one issue honorable members might have seen, the DBSA, the Presidency and National Treasury signing an agreement with various funding institutions to support and in society as a whole. So there is a lot of work that is being done currently, focusing on infrastructure, which is led by Dr. Sputla Ramohupa in the Presidency. Then also there are engagements with business on areas of commonality where we need to complement each other, and these are also being presented in other link with the recovery, speak to each other. So as indicated earlier on, what we're doing on our side, we are convening departments across clusters that are dealing with this kind of issues, so that when we go to the principals, we must present not just a cluster-specific requirements, but must be a government-wide kind of requirements. And we report on the work that we are doing in this area. Well, I've dealt with the issues pertaining to the report with that chairperson. At the end of this discussion, we will ask you to guide you in terms of how you want the reports to be submitted to yourselves, and then we'll duly comply. I think this question was raised by quite a number of members. Then on the issue of why are we saying that we are better than other countries, I think this is a relative kind of statement, is saying that as much as we are a smaller country, a smaller economy, comparatively, even if subjectively so, we can say that we have done much relative to our own size. So we compare ourselves with others, mindful of the fact that we're a smaller economy, a developing country. But by and large, what we have observed is that if it was as it is and nothing was done in government and we continue with a business as usual, the projections that are presented by scientists suggest that we would be in a worse position than we are now currently, if the argument is that we are not in a good situation. So this is obviously a very contentious issue, but from a government point of view, the calculation was again about a cost-benefit analysis that had to be done, guided by the scientists, and government came to what may not be classified as a fully optimal outcome, but at the very least, we have managed to stem the tide. Then on the monitoring, if we are working on quarterly reports, how do we deal with issues as they arise? We need to inform honorable members that on regular basis, we submit reports to the presidency. We go to the clusters with some of the issues as they emerge. So what we'll then do, this will fall again in what Chair you will guide us on how we share information as and when things happen. Mindful of the fact that we have fewer people who are on the field doing this research to get information. There was a question as to whether our information, whether there is independent research that has been done. Yes, there is a lot of independent work that is being done. And in the main, that is geared towards the final report that will bring now to yourselves and say, this is the annual report of performance of government with regard to the management of COVID. And in that final report, which we call the country report, we are also going to include some of the work that papers that have been done by independent sources. I've dealt with the issue of alcohol, and then I've dealt also with coordinated government planning, that we are entering the fray and assisting the different clusters to work together, because this is one of the missing links. Then quickly to round up on my side, Chairperson, there were questions around the benefits of our people from the opportunities that emanate from our COVID management response. Our own appreciation is that we should have used these opportunities to also empower people. So what DPME is going to do going forward is to say that while we deal with the issues going backward in terms of corruption, there are issues going forward, wherein our proposal would be that when we issue these tenders that are linked to COVID-19, can we do what we always say and use that opportunity to drive localization, because it will not help us if what we're fighting about are products that come from outside the country. We have been talking about empowering women, youth, people with disabilities, SMMEs. But what we have observed as a department is that when it comes to opportunities, those things are no longer realized in government. So they are found in speeches, but not in the actual implementation. So Chair, because this is a serious issue, you can guide us on how you want us to interact with the Parliament, so that we're not only focusing on dealing with corruption, but going forward, we need to then deal with these issues insofar as they relate to the empowerment of the people. And we will be making some recommendations to the relevant clusters that any opportunity that arises, can it be linked to some of the issues that we always talk about. Then there was Honorable Kibi also spoke about the maintenance of health facilities. We have not looked into this issue, but it is noted insofar as it can form part of expanded public works program, where you take young people to refurbish the existing infrastructure, perhaps while building new infrastructure. So the point is noted. We didn't monitor it, but we were taking it. The food security issue was dealt with. Then on the MTSF review, there are two issues. So what we presented on today is the roadmap of the review. But at the same time, we are reviewing the performance of government on the implementation of the MTSF as it stands. That is quite material because you don't want a situation whereby we replace failure to perform, to deliver, by saying that we're going to review the MTSF. So each and every point will be accounted for. We have received submissions from all government departments on what they've done up to the end of the quarter, now related to the implementation of the MTSF. Now that report will then assist us when we go to cabinet to show cabinet that as much as we review the MTSF to incorporate the requirements of or the imperatives imposed by COVID, we also show you how government has been performing so that we don't use that as an opportunity to not account for performance. So that report is being processed. We have received the submissions, and the DDG sector monitoring in particular is leading the process of consolidating everything into a report. And as indicated, we don't want DPME to be a post box where we just receive and send to cabinet and yourselves. They are also doing analysis to understand where there is no performance, what are the issues. On the use of technologies, there is quite a number of interventions that we have put in place. We have given CSIR some money. We have
my apology, DG, my apology. Can you try to wrap up? Because we still have got another item to deal with. So if you may, yes. Thank you.
Yeah, Chair, I think we have done with the key essence of the questions. I think I was just going into details in some areas, but safe to say that on this issue of technology and what is being done, and we will include it in our report. Just very lastly, on the issue of women, we have also done a lot of work on GBV, and we are making serious recommendations on what needs to be done in the country when it comes to this important issue, and we will try to include that and lift it in our report. So, Chair, I think on the substantive issues we are done, and then we can be guided by you in terms of how you want us to interact in between the reporting cycles. Thank you.
Thank you, DM and DG. Thank you so much. When you come back for the first and the second quarter, would like you also to come back with the details on the issues and questions that the members have asked, so that we also dispose of them and try to be current as possible when you come back. Thank you very much. If there are any other questions, honorable members, unfortunately, we don't have much time. I would suggest that if there are any other follow-ups, we may do them in writing so that when they come back, they can respond to those issues, but also having provided us written responses so that also we can also make follow-ups on those issues. Other than that, honorable members, allow me to thank the department and see them when we see them in 2 weeks' time. Yeah, thank you very much, DM and DG and the delegation. You may be excused because we'll be dealing with our committee reports now, which we're not necessarily likely to be part of that discussions as well. Thank you very much. You can log off.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. I mean DPME team members, please remain.
Thank you.
Okay. And also we will deal then, honorable members, with also the way forward in terms of these other issues that we have been engaging on, and then we can confirm whether do you agree with my summary, as it were. Other than that, Masi, if you may help me, I know we're supposed to be dealing
Yes,
with
Chair.
whether it's going to be Julius who's going to take us through, but also I assume we're dealing with the adoption of the fourth quarterly report 2019-2020 as
Correct.
expected. Members will remember that we're a little bit behind schedule in terms of compliance, hence the report. But I hope members did have a chance to go through the report. I will suggest with that assumption, because the first the first one is more of a mandatory part and the introduction and all that. We go to the recommendations and observations.
Yes,
If
Chair, you're
members
correct.
agree. Yeah, if members agree with me.
Yes,
Can I
Julius will
get
take
a-
us through, Chair.
Okay. Silence is golden. Julius, quickly, please. Thank you. Yes. Julius, we're waiting for your voice.
Oh, I forgot to.
Okay.
Okay, good afternoon, honorable members and the chair and my colleagues. As Honorable Soma has already indicated, that we zoom straight to the findings and observation and recommendations of the report. The first report before members, is the report for Statistics South Africa. And I will just look into the findings and observation. It's for the fourth quarter of 2019-2020 financial year. The first recommendations read as follows: that the committee noted and welcomed fourth quarter performance of the Statistics South Africa, and the committee commends SSA on the attainment of 90.0% of its annual targets, even though the department is confronted by financial constraint, more particularly on the compensation of employees. The second one, 4.2, the committee notes high staff turnover caused by numerous factors such as lack of sufficient financial resources on compensation of employees to retain due to budget cuts experienced since October 2016. The committee urged SSA to fill all critical funded posts, since an additional amount has been allocated for compensation of employees in 2020-21 budget allocation. And 4.3, the committee should coordinate a meeting between the portfolio committees on appropriation and finance to discuss and find a lasting solution to address financial constraints experienced at SSA, which might affect the department in a long term. And then 4.4, the committee knows that SSA has not received any letter from the National Treasury of intention to cut its budget for 2021 to fund coronavirus pandemic in the country. And 4.5, the committee was concerned with the effect of COVID-19 on SSA and its ability to effectively conduct a successful census 2021. The committee asked SSA to employ more young people as data collectors or enumerators during census 2021. So, honorable members, we may have recommendations on this report for SSA, but it was just only observations. And Chairperson, through you, Chair.
Julius, honorable members, I would suggest that we go through. Are there any comments to this one? First, let me start there. Any takers? I know that we have spent. It has been long. We have dealt also with the current year, so it might also cause a challenge in terms of rewinding. Where were we in 2019? I will then, if there is no takers, then Julius, I'll request that we go, then we'll formally adopt them at the end. Just present all of them. But I'll see by show of hands if members would like to speak.
The next report, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, is the report for the DPSA. With regulations that the committee made, they read as follows. 4.1, the committee knows and welcomes fourth quarter performance of the year for the Department of Public Service and Administration, National School of Government, Center for Public Service Innovation, and the Public Service Commission. The committee was pleased with attainment of the performance targets and spending of the budget. The committee was concerned with the cost the state was incurring in relation to the medical negligence claims from the Department of Health, particularly with reference to Gauteng and Eastern Cape provinces. The committee welcomed announcement of the tax team against this negligence and claims submitted by the medical practitioners and lawyers. The Public Service Commission was requested to join the tax team in monitoring this medical negligence for the purpose of developing a better policy intervention to the cause of these claims. The Public Service Commission has to investigate the reason why disciplinary cases in the public service are prolonged without closure, costing government millions, whilst officials are idling at home. And 4.4, the committee encouraged the National School of Government to provide trainings across all levels or spheres of government. Training and development should be tailored for departments and entities that the Auditor General South Africa flagged consistently with regard to unacceptable audit outcomes. The committee encouraged the school to offer more training on courses aimed to improve sound financial management, such as supply chain management in the public administration. And the committee encouraged the school to assist departments not performing well against set targets with relevant training needs in order to enhance their performance. The National School of Government, 4.6, the National School of Government was advised to commence offering trainings to government officials through visual platforms and online to avoid loss of income due to COVID-19 pandemic. And 4.7, the committee was concerned with the vacancy rate at the Center for Public Service Innovation as a result of the reconfiguration of the center. The committee urged the minister to fast-track the process of reconfiguring the center and share the findings of the report. 4.8, the committee encouraged the department to develop an electronic system to measure performance management in the public service. And 4.9, the committee was concerned about the backlog in finalizing disciplinary cases in the public service. And the department was encouraged to develop a new disciplinary management tool and ensure disciplinary cases are captured in the PESAL system. And failure to load disciplinary cases on the system should be considered as a punishable offense. The department should further provide the committee with a report on a pool of labor experts to be used in fast-tracking disciplinary cases. 4.10, the department was encouraged to make public servants aware that doing business with the state is prohibited by the law. 4.11, the committee stressed about the lack of effective monitoring on the implementation of service delivery improvement plans in the public service. The department was encouraged to strengthen its monitoring unit with the intention to ensure compliance and impact of SDIPs in improving service delivery across government. With regard to recommendations, the committee had only one recommendation that has been proposed, that the committee should organize a joint committee meeting with the Department of Health on the causes and the cost of medical claims as a result of medical negligence. Through you, Honorable Chair, this is the end of the report.
Okay, thank you. The next one.
The next one is the report on the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation. With regard to the findings, Chair and honorable members, 5.1, the committee knows and welcomes the fourth quarter performance of the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation and Brand as South Africa. The committee appreciated over 80% of performance targets by both the department and Brand SA. However, appealed for 100% attainments of targets in the future. The committee, for 5.2, the committee urged the DPME to implement its mandate of monitoring the implementation of the National Development Plan by developing a monitoring tool backed by evidence. Urged the department to come up with a monitoring system for measuring the NDP. 5.3, the committee further notes an improvement by defaulting departments on the payment of service providers such as water and sanitation, agriculture, forestry and fisheries, and public works. The committee stressed the importance of constantly monitoring such improvement and ensure all departments, including state entities, comply with the Public Finance Management Act on paying service provider within 30 days. The committee knows and acknowledged 5.4. The committee knows and acknowledges the Local Government Management Improvement Plan as a monitoring tool used to measure or benchmark institutional performance of municipalities. However, the committee urged the department to provide a detailed report on the Local Government Management Improvement Model as to whether quality services and productivity, before it was productivity in the municipalities have improved. The department has to brief the committee by October 2020 on the model. The committee was dissatisfied with the instability in leadership position in most of government departments at the national level. The committee learned that most of the Director General at national level are at an acting capacity, which poses a risk to stability in the public service. The committee appealed to the minister and the presidency for the DPME to encourage all government departments with acting position for more than a year to advertise all senior positions and fill them. The committee will also address this instability of accounting officers with the minister of the DPSA. 5.6. The committee appreciates the fact that Brand as South Africa finally has appointed the Board of Trustees. The committee encouraged the board to work hard on reviewing and approving policies with the aim of improving good governance in the entity. 5.7, the committee encouraged Brand South Africa to urgently finalize the matter of the suspended Chief Executive Officer. And then 5.8, the committee noted challenges experienced by Brand South Africa due to COVID-19 for being unable to conduct planned trainings and workshops. The committee encouraged Brand South Africa to conduct planned trainings and workshops via visual platforms. That's the end, Honorable Chair and Honorable members of DPME report.
Thank you, Julius. Next report.
We are remember we in the last financial year we only had 3 votes.
We did it. Yes, yeah. Okay, yeah.
So we have exhausted everything.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Julius, for that. Honorable members, I now present the State SA report. Would like any input or a mover for the adoption? I'll see by show of hand. Honorable members, are we still here? I can see all of us here. We're still here. Honorable Kibi, are you here? Okay.
Mahadebe, I'm here.
Honorable, over to you, ma'am.
I wanted to move for the adoption of the report of the Stats SA.
Thank you, ma'am. Any second?
Chairperson, Maluleke. Maluleke. Yes, Chairperson, I would like to second the adoption of the report for Stat SA. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, honorable member. May I then, for the adoption or comment on DPSA report?
Chair.
Honorable Clark, is the honorable who would like to speak?
Julie?
Oh, honorable Julie. Yes, ma'am.
No, there are no amendments that I'm bringing forward, Chairperson. I wanted just to move for the adoption of the report.
Thank you, ma'am. Any seconder?
Chairperson.
Honorable Mauman.
Thank you, Chair. I would also like to second the move for the adoption.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ma'am. Now I call on adoption or comments on DPME report, fourth quarter 2019-20. Any mover or any member would like to make a comment? Honorable members.
Chairperson Maluleke.
Honorable Maluleke, over to you.
Yes, Chairperson, I move for the adoption of the report for DPME on their fourth quarter report 2019-2020. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any second?
And Julie?
Yes, ma'am.
I move for the to second as adopted by Honorable Maluleke.
Thank you very much. That brings us to almost the end of Honorable Schreiber.
Hi, thank you, Chair. Could you just note that the DA reserves are right in terms of all three of the reports?
Yes, oh yes. Accordingly, it will. Thank you very much. That will bring us to almost the end of our business of the day. But I did promise that in terms of the first presentation that we received, that we should have a sort of a way forward so that we can also make a follow up on the issues, on the matters. I would like to say,
Honorable Chairperson.
Yes.
Also note the EFF.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Noted. So I will then go back to say that I suggest that we note the MTSF presentation, looking forward to receive an actual specific report as it were, because it was just on what they're intending to do. So I think it's better that we just say we note that one. Secondly, that the department, in terms of COVID-19 current updated report, when they come back to report on the first and the second quarter, they must also include separate presentation that will speak to the specific issues. In particular, they must lift those issues that the members had an interest, such as one, the financial expenditure on COVID-19 and the service providers that they were awarded to, and the amounts and so forth. There's two. Number three, also probably this one is not a recommendation per se, but I think that the department must also persist to say that if there are any allegations of corruption in the department, and also they find themselves in the public space, how do they then respond to that and be seen that they are responding to those allegations? Because some act on issues that are in the public media space, somebody must open a case. That will also, I think we should raise this issue when we engage also with PSA next week, because they are the ones that also are charged with assisting departments in terms of disciplinary actions and ensuring that the systems and policies are oiled enough. The fourth one that I would like, okay, no, this is this one, the other department. Well, the other one that I'm suggesting, because of DPME, of course, our priority now currently in our areas of focus is the COVID-19, but also the departments and ourselves also we've got our core mandate and issues that we need to look at. That the department, we must encourage the department also, if there are any other issues that they feel that they need to keep the hotline, its update, and how many issues have been positively been solved. I know that the 30 days payment, Julius, that was not within our space, but would love also to get a feel on that one. What is happening in relation to COVID-19 procurement processes? Because sometimes you'll find that they will neglect those companies that are not well known of their space. So I don't know whether it's a better way to say well known, but be selective in terms of also that they should also report whether even the due processes were followed on that. Yes, thank you. The other one that I would suggest, that which was not part of the report, honorable members, is that DPME, when they come back, also they must talk to us on the issues or what we find in the media in relation to brand, because there are nasty, unhealthy issues that tends to say that there's a sort of inverted commas, using that word very carefully, of instability of some sort, so that they can give us a sort of comfort that they are at ease with the matters that are happening in Brand SA. Those are the recommendations that I thought we must put, honorable members. The very last one on the report that we have dealt with, I will suggest that Julius and Marcy and the team, that since we have adopted them, some of the issues in terms of the recommendations must see themselves in our tracking tool, so that we can send it to departments so that they can respond to it in terms of it, instead of waiting for the speaker to write to them, without undermining that process, which is more of a parliamentary legal process. But the tracking system also that we agreed upon tends also to assist us on that. May I get honorable members, if they would like also to say in terms of the recommendations and closing, in terms of how do we see ourselves move forward for today's meeting? I'll see by show of hands or somebody shouting. Okay. I'll take this one as silence is golden, and I hope I'll be making a correct assumption that honorable members, they agree with my summary in terms of how we think we must move forward on this issue of today's meeting. With that, I would like to thank all honorable members, and also wish the chairperson of the portfolio committee a speedy recovery, and do stay safe. We'll see you at plenary. Have a wonderful blossom day. Thank you, honorable members. The meeting stands adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Chair.
you very much, Chairperson. Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Lisoma. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chair. Amanda,
Thank you
Chairperson,
very
thank
much,
you.
honorable members. Same to you. Thank you. Have a
Thank you to
blossom.
Mascole and the team.
Yes, collectively so. Thank you,
Mascole
guys.
and the
Bye.
team, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank-
everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mama.